podcast. So much universe, so little time.
Hey everyone, it is time for Pannithor. It's Mark Zielinski, and of course, I am joined by the ever-popular Wiki Dave. How's it going, Wiki Dave?
That's a lot of energy for me. I'm doing fine. I don't know if ever popular is the word, but you know me, so I'm popular enough. That's the way I see it. I'm doing well.
There you go. Oh, come on. With our topic tonight, our listeners can go check out the Kings of War wiki, and, there's a lot of material that you have on this particular topic for tonight, and very excited about it. It's a really good read, and actually, I would love to see a novel for this come along, too, at the end of the day.
That's partly the reason
short story, but...
Yeah, well, that's partly the reason why I bring this up. There is some context of why I'm bringing up this particular character, because of other things that are actually happening in the world of Pannithor at the moment. So yes, you are definitely on the right track, and I will explain a little bit more of my thinking later in the show, just to put a little teaser.
There you go. Well, Dave, why don't you just go ahead and tell everybody what our topic for tonight is?
The topic of tonight is the character of Lothal Voidheart, also known as Lothal Silverheart or Lothal Bleakheart. That's it. So it's a character who has changed probably the most during the life of Kings of War, and is one of the older characters. So it's the first time we're actually deep diving into a character specific kind of episode, and there's a few things that we can discuss whenever we talk about anything like a specific character. Sometimes it can get a bit disjointed. Sometimes there's a few blanks in the lore, but that's the part of the fun of following a franchise lore. Is sometimes things aren't as smooth, but that's the fun of talking about it. Really.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to deep diving into this because, of course, it dovetails with Champions, and it's got a long tail to it, even touching the League of Infamy. So,
yeah, that's an interesting one. But before we dive into it, I think it's time for our first segment, which is...
It's time for the news. It's very, very exciting. So, to me, the big news is it's sitting here. It's we're recording on June 6th, 2025, Ben Stoddard's birthday. And we got the big announcement that he is having another novel released in October 2025, The Argument of Stone. So,
yes, I'm excited. Not just because it's Ben's birthday. Happy birthday, Ben, out there. He's a friend of the show, and he looks very much like me as well in terms of our hairstyle and our beard makeup. So if you think of me, him, and Mike Rossi kind of all look the same, and if you just took a head shots of each one of us, just bald with the beard. But I'm excited because it is the second book of the War of Stone trilogy. Obviously, the first book was Pride of a King, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. This is the first book was a really good book. Some people said it was a little bit too long. Don't feel like that way. I think it's got so much cool free dwarf lore, a lot of stuff in it, a lot of abyssal lore is starting to creep in, which I'm suspecting the Argument Stone will have another heap amount in there. We get characters that we have played on the table for quite a while in that first novel, like we're talking about Bannock, we're talking about Garrick Hammerhand, we're talking about Haenerys, Severe. There's a lot of characters that actually that have first appeared on the table that are in this book, and we get so much more personality too. It also, in the story of it, is that they're going to go to Craig Hud, which is more known as where Harpy's Rift took place. So that big energy explosion that came from Harpy's in the Harpy Mountains, and what Harpy's Rift was all about. took place in Craig Hud. Now, eventually, the Forces of Good sealed that hub, and this story takes place around that time. I'm suspecting a little bit after that time. It looks like Civi, or let's say the Free Dwarf side of things. And this is a little bit spoiler from the last one, so I would recommend go read that first. But the Free Dwarfs are actually going towards a Craig Hud, and it sounds like they're going to meet Dravak Dalkin, the one that caused Harpy's Rift. And this will be a little bit interesting from a lore point of view, because the last time we actually heard about Dravak was actually in Deepwater Crusade, and we didn't actually know where the Deepwater Crusade, when that actually took place. Now, I had always assumed that after Harpy's Rift kind of happened, a lot of the Forces of Good kind of vacated Harpy's Rift, and then the Abyssal Dwarfs kind of still took over a few holds here and there, including Craig Hud. And I thought Dravak actually took back that hold after the Forces of Good left. So I always assumed he was stationed there during the Deepwater Crusade, and then that plotline he helped out the forces of the Abyss. But this could actually fill in that a little bit of a lore gap of what actually happened to Dravak. Now, it does say in the Deepwater Crusade that Dravak was still in the Harpy Mountains. I had assumed he was in Craig Hud, but maybe he actually got beaten based off the story that's about to take place, and he was somewhere else in Harpy Mountains, because he did have a navy as well. And if you look at the map of where Craig Hud is and how far east he actually went in the story of the Deepwater Crusade, it kind of implies that he was right next to the water. So it could be a case of he's going to get kicked out of Craig Hud and establish himself at another hold that's pretty beaten. So I think this is actually going to fill in that lore gap that we've had in the story there, that kind of would match up. It also would help date the Deepwater Crusade of when that took place, so we know what happens well after 3866, because that's where the story of Pride of the King kind of left off. So that will be interesting to see what happens there. The other part of the story, because if those that read Pride of the King, you kind of have two stories. You've got the free dwarf story that's happening up north, and then you've got the dwarf story happening down south. Garrick and Bannock have kind of escaped to Dolgarth, the old dwarf capital, and found Royden. So Royden from Dungeon Saga. And we haven't really had a lot on Royden since Dungeon Saga and all that took place. So this would be really good to have him really deep. Again, another character we've played on the table before. We're going to get a little bit more personality from Royden of what he's actually like. It looks like they have fled together, and they're kind of just trying to stay away from the Golix forces, who are trying to actually assassinate them because they're worried that Royden's going to come back and take the throne because of the Abyssal Dwarfs' kind of influence in the dwarven population, dwarf society, you could say, and that's been slowly escalating. So this is all book 2 of the War of Stone trilogy. So it's really, really exciting, and I can't wait to see more of these dwarf characters that we have already known about, that we're starting to get a really good indication. And one little tidbit on top of all that, they've released the cover art for the Argument of Stone, and there's a dwarf on there, and I checked in with Ben, and that's actually the first time we've ever seen art of Garrick Hammerhand. So if we've actually got two models that have come out of Garrick recently. We've got one that you get for the Mantic points, and you also get one if you go take a tour of Mantic Studios. So this is what he actually looks like. So if you do want a guide of how to paint him, there we go. So this is the first art we've got. And Garrick has been around since the beginning of Kings of War. He was in the first rulebook. He was actually in the Mantic Journal book, I think the second Mantic Journal that they ever released before first edition was released, and actually showed him, there was a bit of I can't remember, it was the Battle of something. I can't remember the top of my head. This is the problem with me not doing enough research. It mentions him finding one of the god booms. What was it? The Battle of the Battle of the Barrow. He fights some undead, manages to get this comb, which is one of the boons. And he first appeared there in the Mantic Journal all those years ago, before even first edition came out. So this is really starting to get connecting all the lore together for what's on the table or what's been written. I'm really, really excited, and I'm hoping that came across to you, Mark, of how excited I am about this book.
Oh yeah, I can definitely feel it. It's definitely palpable. So, you mentioned that Dalkin might be near the sea or whatever. See, I always figured that we've got the two-player starter set, War in the Hold. So I always think the goblins and the ratkin are all over that. So, fighting away and in that area. I think there's also undead. If you take a look at the map, they've got different holds or different
Yeah.
camps for each of them. So there's I'll use the word evil scattered all over the place.
Mhm.
As far as that goes, I know Squirm and Vermin doesn't gotta like that, but
Yeah. Well, the story of that explains that 2+ data set that you said there. So when the Craig Hud got taken over, that was taken over by Darkin, and he was digging down. He got all his forces to dig, then tapped into this vein of magic that caused a big explosion and a big beam that happened in the air, which essentially acted like those bug things. You know how those lights that you turn on, and the bugs come to it and they get zapped and they die. It was kind of like that kind of thing. There was a huge a shot in the air. But what was happening underground was that you got everyone was basically drawn to this. So free Ratkin were drawn towards this energy beam, and so were the goblins. So that's when you get Gup, I think it was Gup, or Gup Longnow was one of the characters you got during Harpy's Rift, and she got these and gauntlets, I should say, and fired. And so basically, you got free Ratkin and goblins underground. They were fighting each other, which is that what the 2+ starter set is about. And then you've got the abyssal dwarfs kind of trying to dig down, securing this release of magic. All this magic that's evaporating is coming out, so they're getting attacked. So it's basically you got the forces of good trying to come in and stop them. You got the abyssal dwarfs trying to hold this new vein of magic, and then you got the goblins and the ratkin fighting each other, plus those abyssal dwarfs trying to get to that vein. So it was a bit of a mishmash of all these forces trying to get that. So that's what that 2+ starter set was actually about, was just about those goblins and Ratkin kind of meeting each other while they're trying to get their vein of magic.
Oh yeah. And then toss in the abyssals, So
yeah,
it was
tossing the
real
abyssals, and they had
mishmash
Ratkin
too.
slaves, and yeah, it was a big old
Yeah.
mishmash of everything. So it's really exciting, especially because the timeline is kind of essentially going forward with champions and with 4th edition. So there's going to be a situation where stories are going to be taking place different times during this timeline. It's really good to establish when they take place. So the Argument Stone, assuming this takes place right after the last book, takes place in 3866, which is around the time where the Halflings broke away from the League of Voidheart. So this is around that time. It was before Riftforged Orcs even existed. So that's the way you can kind of gauge where this is. So there's a lot of potential changing things within the dwarf society that we could see already in place when 4th edition comes out. So they really want to finish this or get this trilogy out, which is probably why October 2025 is so important, because there might be something that happens in there to dwarf society that's actually reflective in 4th edition. And I do know Mantic are making a big deal about keeping the lore and the game more in sync than they have previously. There's a lot more synergy and having the books, and that is reflective of another book that we're going to talk about next, and keeping the synergy alive in terms of everything. So I'm excited. What's any last thoughts on that book? Any speculation? Anything you're thinking of?
Well, I mean, I do want to back up your point that Mantic is really focusing on the lore. We're working on actually an episode about that, so stay tuned. And it's just an interesting time. I want to say I'm a little surprised that it came out. I thought that this was going to be a little farther back, maybe like another year out. So one of my speculations for the 4th edition starter set is new dwarves versus the new race. That's coming out, the new faction. That might be tasty. I also thought it'd be dwarfs versus elves, and you could get out the new plastics for both of them. But then again, on my other heart of hearts, I'm like, I already got dwarfs. Give me something else. So that's it. I'm going to plant my flag on new dwarfs versus new faction, 4th edition, and November this year. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
No, October. October's when the book comes out.
Oh, well, you know why? November, I would say, only because of Champions. So the Champions box is going to come out a month after the release then. So let's go with October.
Yeah, so I'm thinking it's coming so soon just because there's something fundamental that happens in Dwarf Society that is reflective in 4th edition. So I'm thinking, because the whole, and again, this is spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen to now, skip ahead. The Golok is kind of indicating he's a bit an abyssal dwarf, and that he's kind of either been converted or always was. He's kind of changed sides, and it's hinting that the abyssal dwarfs are kind of taken over Dwarf Society, which is why they're trying to get rid of Royden, because there is hints that he's going to take the throne to get rid of Golok. I'm thinking that maybe that happens. Maybe the fact of like that Golok is now out in 4th edition and there's a new king. And this is the story of that. This is the story of whoever is now on the throne, of how it came to be. Whether it's Royden or not, who knows? It could be. Royden doesn't seem like someone that wants to be king, though. He's very much like a younger party dude, just want to be on the side of it. So it could be the fact of, they are able to get rid of Golok, but somebody else takes the throne, because he is his. Royden is his nephew, so it's not as like his child or anything like that. He's just in the bloodline, so it could be someone else from the bloodline to come along. I think there's something there. There is something more going on, so it'll be interesting to see how that comes up. And the fact of like there's so many characters in here that we've known about for so long that we're just learning more and more about. I like the idea of Bannock is being haunted by his memories of his past, and that he sees these visions, and is even though we were playing him on the table, which seems like just another stone priest, but in actual fact, he's haunted by his failings and spirits of people that has died in his past. And I think that's some amazing character work. So I'm really looking forward to the book by Ben. I think it's his 3rd book that he's done for Pannithor, because he did Drowned Secrets as well.
Yeah, he did Drowned Secrets, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So yeah, looking forward to it. But on that note, we'll move on to the next book, which was more unexpected. I had a few teasers of the other books, but this one kind of came out of the blue, and I'm glad they kept it secret because I've got so many thoughts on it. The Stand of Callanspire. So basically, it's continuing the adventures of Aaron Cadwater from Broken Alliance, who ended up being the Muster Master for the Shires, and also a new Champions hero, Axel Tricklebrook, who is the Gilkin champion. It looks like an axolotl, but part of the Trident Realm company box. So not only are we getting more history on Aaron Cadwater, what happens after the Storm of the Shires, because we know he was the Muster Master around that time. It also is indicating that they're going to EJ, which is down south. So this is a story that takes very much on the lower half of the map. Actual Callanspire is actually on the map now. So if you bring up a map, look at the bottom, you can actually find Callanspire there. And we're going to find more about the EJ Halfling. The EJ Halflings are a subset of Halflings that were established after Winter's War, after the Infancy was created, after all the ice melted and the Infancy was created. These Halflings were cut off from the Shires, so they ended up establishing a little settlement down there and kind of was interacting with elves down there, so they've become this own little society of elves. That's why that you see those rocket halflings you have with the jetpacks. They come from here. You also got the aeronauts as well. I think aeronauts come from here, and it's established during Broken Alliance that they've developed this massive blimp. And at the end of Broken Alliance, it was indicated that Persepolis' apprentice, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was going to build his own one, and this was on 3,866. So it's obviously been a few years, because it would have been after the Storm of the Shires the story actually takes place in. But also adding into the Axel Tricklebrook side of it, and it looks like we're going to find out a lot more about the Trident Realm Society and its relationship with the River Guard, because the River Guard isn't a Trident Realms race from, they wasn't created by the Wicked Ones. They kind of were brought into the Trident Realms society, but they live mainly on land. So perhaps we're going to find out more about the River Guard, of how they act as a society, how they interact with the Trident Realms. We also will get Axel's more history, hopefully, on Axel, about he if you don't know Axel, I've got all this is on the wiki, so you can look it up. But basically, during the Winter's War, his race was slowly dying off because it was getting way too cold, and so all of them were kind of sent away to hide and to isolate and essentially go into hibernation. And just recently, Axel has awoken as part of that champion's lore. So it's quite interesting. It's kind of placing where in the timeline Champions actually takes place, because Aaron Cadwater is a halfling. The oldest halfling ever is only about 70 years old. You wouldn't think he is a 70-year-old man, and he was around about 23 around the Stormshires when he was Muster Master. So you could say it could be, we're heading to the end of that decade there, but it doesn't date it too hard. So we know around about, I would say it's only like maybe 10 years after the Storm of the Shires, but it's starting to help us kind of indicate where in the timeline is actually taking place. And the other thing I would add in there, this book comes out in November 2025. It's written by a newcomer to the Pannithor universe, which is Joshua Reynolds. I understand he's done quite a lot of Black Library stuff as well, so definitely check him out. But also, they haven't released the art of this. They've actually released the art for the Argument in Stone, which comes in 2025. Also, the next book we'll talk about, The Last Light, that comes out in December, but they haven't released the art for this one, the one in the middle. So I don't know if that's just because we haven't ever seen Aaron Cadwater as artwork. We've never actually seen official Aaron artwork before, whether they're holding that back as a bit of surprise, whether that's the cover's going to indicate the new faction, because it comes out the same month. So there could be the reason why the cover actually is indicating that these are the new bad guys, because the story that they've released, the synopsis, doesn't actually go into who's the bad guy or who's that faction that they're fighting against. It's very vague. It's all, the line just says, but will even his strategic genius be able to counter a foe which might is enough to humble one of the greatest empires in the world? So it's indicating that they're facing somebody who is very, very strong. But it doesn't say anywhere on here what it is, because it's mentioning an invader who threatens all the folk of Mantic. So I think it's being very vague of who they're fighting. I believe it could be related to a possible new faction. But it's so exciting to get more on EJ, more on Aaron Cadwater, and also more on Axel and Splish, I guess, as well, his little companion, and Trident Realm culture in general. I think this is really cool, because we did touch on some of it with Drowned Secrets. And this is all taking place down south in the continent of Vishishana, so near the equator. If you look on the map, it's right at the bottom. So this will be a good idea of what's going down there as well. That was a lot. Mark, what do you think? What's your feelings on The Stand at Callanspire?
Well, your cover may also be the cover of 4th edition. We'll see. Maybe.
That's not my cover. That's what they put in the Wing to Serve.
Yeah. So, well, no, I'm saying that the cover that's going to replace that, we all know that is a temporary cover. That was made very clear that was a temporary cover for the book. The other thing is you got Splish in there, so going to be very popular character, I believe. We've already suggested to Ronnie that we've got to have a Splish plush toy or something like that for the kids. So that is a winner, man. Absolutely.
It is definitely a winner.
So you just see it right away. The other thing too is, expanding on the Gilkin. So, could that be the new faction? I don't think so, but
Gilkin was clearly part of the Trident Realm. They made it clear with that.
So will we get a splash release? For the Trident Realm, possible. To add some Gilkin in there, but I like the fact that Axel's there, so maybe that's just enough for right now. We really need the plastic placoderm. So sorry, Mantic. But there's other, box sets and things like that and range to be filled out. So they had their turn. So we'll see what happens. The other thing I wanted to mention too was, just as you were talking about, more with the River Guard and the frogs and stuff like that, it's interesting to see how they would all fit into this, I would like a little more explanation on the, I guess it goes from the, shallow waters to the deep waters. The Trident Realm covers it all. So That's the explanation I have in my head. So, but it'd still be interesting to get a little more background about that. And in particular, because we've got all those new plastics and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So Mantic made the big frog on frog push. And, I think it went okay for them, but, maybe a little more lore and, getting people fired up about the background of it all change that a little bit. So
yeah, I mean they've established that the River Guard were invited into the Trident Realm for protection kind of deal, and we do know the River Guard definitely protect the Southern Rift. On the map, there's a little Southern Rift, and they're essentially around there keeping the forces of the Abyss at bay as well. So they actually are clearly established in the more northern part of the map that we know of having these little colonies and setups to help with the overall goal of the Trident Realm, which we do know now as keeping the forces of the Abyss at bay and helping combat the forces of evil. I would say on the spectrum, they're definitely more on the good side of things of keeping those forces there. And the River Guard seem to be a little bit, they're more they're like those cousins that they're the adopted cousin of the Weather. They're not actually related. But they are definitely on the same side. So they have established previously that there are colonies down south looking after that Southern Rift and scattered throughout it. So I think this is the first time we're seeing more about. So my theory is that there was a colony down south that was attacked, and they thought it was the forces of the Abyss, and Axel was assigned to go check out, hey, can you go over there and figure out what, are the forces of the Abyss, getting a foothold or what's happening? And they went there and he discovers something else. He discovers maybe the new faction storming through or something along those lines. It is also noted in the description that we will find out more about the Southern kindred. So in Elves, there are many different kindred. You've got the Northern, you've got the Eastern, you've got the Southern, you've got the Sea kindred, you've got the Dragon kindred, you've got the Twilight kindred, you've got the Sylvian kindred, you've got the Ice kindred. So you've got quite a lot, but we don't really know a lot about the Southern side of it. We know a few people that are based there, but we don't really know anything about the culture, whether it's whether are they different in terms of how they act? Because Northern kindred are typically the typical elves that the more kind of golden armor, kind of stoic, kind of traditional, all that. And we know that the Dragon kindred are all about their riding their dragons and breeding dragons. You've got the Twilight, obviously the Twilight kin. You've got the Sylvan kindred, which is obviously all the wood elves kind of thing. But what are the Southern kindred? What are they? Are they more like free dwarf kind of elves kind of thing? A little bit more loosey-goosey about everything? And I think it'd be an awesome way of dipping our toes into what the Southern kindred actually are as well. So, which is exciting just to establish more on the different kind of elves that we have in the world of Pannithor.
You know what? You've got my mind spinning because, that'd be a cop-out, though, if the new faction was elves.
Yeah, I mean, they could be... It could be like a Northern Alliance thing where it's a combination of several different factions, different races and so forth. So, yeah, it could be. I mean, that there also could be an Elven connection. It could be, I think that they do this in the Warpath universe, is that the Asterians, they knew about the plague ahead of time, but they didn't tell anyone. Could this be a case of the Southern kindred actually were keeping this other faction at bay? And now those doors are starting to open up, and it's their dirty little secret. And it could be a variation on elves or something that they've caused. So there's so many different possibilities that could go down.
Well, here, you just gave a little credence or some possibility for my new elves versus new dwarfs 2-player box set. So
we know what the banner looks like. So the coat of arms, it's all on the wiki, is that the Southern kindred do have their own coat of arms, just like all the other kindreds, like Northern, Western, Dragon. They all have their own sigil, you could say, and their own banner. So there is a clear indication that they're their own thing. So there's so many different possibilities they could take, really. I'm intrigued.
Absolutely. So, well, we'll see.
Yes, we will.
We shall see. It's an exciting time. Let's just put it that way. So, with champions out and, Ronnie's, flipping a little bit on whether or not we'll get 3 or 4 releases, but it sounds like 3 releases a year, for the next 4 years. That's pretty impressive. So,
I mean, it all comes down to money, really. At the end of the day, let's be honest. If they make a lot of money on it, they're going to be able to put more money into the development. And we know how Halo's doing well, but you also want to make sure that you're directing additional funds into the right area. And that's just business at the end of the day. So if you want more of the stuff, support it. And support it in the way that of stuff that you want as well. If you see something you don't like, don't get it just because it's Mantic, or don't get it just because you should. Get it because you think it's really cool. Like there's books. Like I buy the books because I really love this lore stuff. Hopefully it comes across in the podcast. I essentially started this podcast and was kicked off another one because of the lore, and I really like talking about it. I built the wikis because of it, and I want to promote it as much as I possibly can. But the same comes down to yourself. If you're like, oh, I really like halfling lore, get the halfling lore, support the models and all that stuff. So really come vote with your wallet at the end of the day, because that's the best way of pushing a company to keep producing stuff, which is what we've seen with microtransactions and video games. There's no reason why they keep on doing it. It's because people keep on buying them. So it's a good way of using speaking with your wallet kind of deal. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I think that's right to move into the next book on the list, called Last Light, which is actually coming out on December 2025 by the legendary Mark Barber, who's written the most Pannithor books. He wrote the first one of the story, what was it? Tales from Mantic it was called at the time, but now it's called Tales of Pannithor. He's done Steps. He did Steps of Deliverance, Hero Falling, and Faith Aligned, which they're actually now calling the Sacred Arc series. So this Last Light is the last book of that series. And for those that need a reminder, Steps of Deliverance was the first one, and then Hero Falling kind of took Estelle's story, and then Faith Aligned took Orion's story, and now they're coming back together for the Last Light. So it's kind of like a little diamond kind of shape of how the story went, but they're calling it the Sacred Arc series, which is the name of the order that Orion is in, and it will be also the first story that has Gnaeus Stannis, which we've recently learned about his up in quotations niece, Alana Stannis, in Champion. So this is Gnaeus has been in Kings of War since first edition, so he's been around a while, but this is the first time we're actually getting a story with him in it, and we're going to find out more about his personality. He is the Paladin of the Paladins. He is in charge of all the Paladin orders at the top of the chain for the Basilian forces. So it's all really good. It's cool to actually see what the leader of all these Paladins is like. He's very much like, if it's the right thing, go ahead and do it. That's how he ended up being at the top, because he defied orders. To actually, he defied the orders of the Basilian Homingi, or whoever's in charge, the Duma, and he was like, no, I'm not going to follow that, because, that's not the right Paladin thing to do. So he's got a lot of authority, he's the top of the chain, and it's really poignant that Mark is actually going to be writing for the top of the chain Paladin, because Mark is the Paladin of the High Paladin of the Pannithor books, and I'm really looking forward to that. So that's in December 2025. He's already had a book come out this year for Pannithor, Through Thick and Thin. So I think he's probably the first author that's had two Pannithor books coming out on the same year. So massive shout out to Mark. I know he's keen to come on the show again. I think we've had him on the show before. We'll have him on the show. We talk quite a lot. It'll be great. He's a really great guy. And I'm really looking forward to Last Light wrapping up. I think Estelle is a really cool character. Would love to see her in Dungeon Saga. Also would love to see her own origin story as well. I think there's a lot of it. For those that don't know, Estelle is half Eli, basically half angel, half Eohai, whatever. Half angel, ones with the wings, half human, half that. And she has got an interesting story. If you've read Steps of Deliverance, I think that it's so great. When you read it at the beginning, you don't realize, and by the end of it, you realize who she is, and it's a really great story. So I'm really looking forward to that conclusion, and I think it's well deserved by Mark. He's such an advocate of the story of these Pannithor lore books. I think he's done the most, and the fact of his Sacred Arc series includes so much that has been released in the Kings of War universe. I mean, Hero Falling has a lot of Dungeon Saga characters in there. It elaborates on a lot of characters who just were in the Kickstarter of that, and actually it makes them part of this world a lot more, which I would love for someone to do with the Dungeon Saga origin characters that were included there. The Faith Aligned is so good at going into more of the politics of how how the paladins kind of operate, and it's so great. And I think he's added so much to the story, and he deserves all the credit in the world. Now I'm going to throw it to Mark while I catch your breath. What's your feelings on the final book? Have you read the series yet?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this one. It's really good. It's also our only audio book that we have. The Steps to
Steps. Yeah.
You can actually get that on Audible. So definitely check that out. I really want to see Estelle and Orion models in the Kings of War vault, in the Mantic vault, in the Kings of War section. I really, really want to. The cover for this book is awesome. That is the model I want of Estelle. It just really cool. Just very evocative. I'm just loving it. Looking forward to this one. I've interviewed Mark a number of times. He's a wonderful guy. And we got to have him back on the show for sure. And, nobody embodies, for me, Pannithor, Mantica, etc., is all Mark Barber. So he's really kicked it off. Followed very closely by Rob Berman. But anyways, I'm really looking forward to it. And, I'm kind of sorry that it's the last book, but then again, I'm thinking, what else is he going to do? So what's the next adventure for him? What are we going to see? And so that should be very exciting. So really looking forward to it. And it'll be interesting to see if there's any 4th edition twist in it. You know what I mean? If we're right and 4th edition is coming out, is there something in the book that kind of ties it together? And, or these releases are coming pretty close together, October, November, December, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen that before out of anything Winged Hussar before.
I'm Brandon Rossbond of Winged Hussar Publishing, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe Podcast.
So that's the other thing that has my antenna up. I've never seen a bang, bang, bang. So
and it just shows you that the growing of the lore. The lore is growing. The lore is getting more people are getting engaged. I mean, I've seen a lot of comments of, what kept people sometimes interested in Warhammer. Just always go back to that. I mean, they are the leaders of this particular hobby at the moment. The reason why some people still get interested in Warhammer when the game's not really their cup of tea is the lore. It's the expansion. Is these books, and it keeps them interested. And it's the same with Kings of War. There might be not a lot of releases, and saying that, they haven't mentioned any of these releases on their website yet, only through Winged Hussar announcements, which is a little bit rough considering how much effort it takes to write a novel, and how the announcement of a book is the best time to get that hype, get those pre-orders, get everyone really excited and talking about it. So if you're out there, you want to help out, share this around, and hopefully someone from Mantic can put a little bit of a news post, just announce all these books. It's a lot of work to go into, and I agree. Getting. I mean, we've got until December for the last light. Get Orion in the vault, get Estelle in the vault. I think these are really cool characters to have, and definitely characters you could use in the Dungeon Saga Origins, or even on the table as maybe the paladin leader of a regiment, of a force. Of paladins on the table. There's so many possibilities for it, and I think I'm really excited to see it. I'm currently, my job is to, and you're right, it's very rare to see so many stories come out and one after another. I think Last Light is interesting because where does it take place on the timeline? Is it actually still going to be before 4th edition, or is it going to be after? The last books, they take place in 3865 around about. So, I mean, whether that's kind of takes place because Hero Falling and Faith Aligned only takes place a few weeks or months, I can't remember. I think it's only like 6 weeks or something after Steps of Deliverance. So we could be seeing Last Light take place within the same year. So you've got all those 4 books taking place within a very short amount of time. We've also got 3 other books that we know that are coming. That's Fall of the Celestians, Rage of Grace, and Cost of Power. Now, I have reached out over to Brandon to see if I can get some little inside knowledge of release dates. Now, he did mention that Rage of Grace is scheduled for around about January, February next year. So possibly if it hits the January mark, we could get 4 books in a row. Then we got Fall of the Celestians coming, which I know they're in the editing process for. We could see that in February. We could just get book after book. It's a lot of work for me because I like to edit the wiki and get it up to date so people just jumping into whatever book is there has a way, has an avenue to do that. So go check it. Definitely check out the wiki. Argument of Stone is going to be the first on the table. So I'm going to get hopefully all of Pride of the King, get all that lore shoved into the wiki so everyone can get up to date, especially with Garrick and all the main players like Bannock. But it's really, really exciting to have all these books coming out. And yeah, I love this lore and I really hope it goes well. But at the end of the day, if I don't like the lore, I will say it. I'm not going to hide it at all, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's getting getting these books on a release schedule like this. It's getting a little bit more exciting. The lore's getting more popular, and yeah, we're going to keep on talking about it, even if no one's listening. I'll be telling somebody about it, so I'm really looking forward to it. And again, Mantic, you out there, do a news article on it. Let's get the hype going. Let's get everyone excited about the release in a few months. And you got December for Last Light. It's a really good chance to come up with an STL for Orion and maybe provide a digital copies of all 4 books and the STL as a little package. I don't know. That would be a little pretty cool.
And Estelle, just in time for the holidays.
Exactly.
That'd be perfect.
Cool. Well, that's all the news. And also, obviously, keep in mind that we had Claws of the Plane and Through Thick and Thin already come out this year. That's 2. So we're going to have 5 books by the end of this year. I can't think of any other year that we've had 5 Pannithor-related novels coming out, 5 of them in 1 year. And yeah, I'm not sure if that's happened before. I don't think it has happened before. But it's extremely, extremely exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for me, just tacking on to the end of the news, we're working on the Origins Game Fair. Mantic is going to have a booth there, and that is now confirmed to be connected to the Ohio War Kings area. So we're going to be doing Champions demos. We're going to be doing Halo demos. I'm running a Halo paint and take, multiple sessions of that. Grace is going to be doing, all about the base. We got Kings of War, learn how to play Armada, all sorts of stuff. So we had to cancel the Epic events, sadly, because the Epic models aren't coming until the end of September, or end of summer, I should say now. So it could be the end of September. But we're really looking forward to it. So if you are going to be in Columbus, Ohio, between the 18th and 22nd of June, certainly swing by and see everybody. We're trying to bring you lots and lots of Mantic goodness, and it should be a great time. Really looking forward to it. Blake, friend of the show, Schroed, is going to be running the booth, and yeah, it's going to be great. Really looking forward to it. So hopefully we'll see your face in the place.
Where can people go to get more information?
People can go to originsgamefair.com, I believe. So just Google Origins Game Fair, and you will get it. If you go to the events page, just type in Ohio War Kings, or you can type in Kings of War or Mantic. Use those keywords, and all the events will come up for you.
All right. That's good. That's a good little plug there. So that's the end of the news. Really exciting. If you've got any questions about anything we talked about, obviously we'll put the links below for the pre-orders of these books. But flick us a question if you've got a specific question you want us to talk about and discuss. We're more than happy to. I think we love kind of deep diving into these things, and there's only so much time so we can spitball off each other. So if you've got a particular question you want us to talk about with the books, let us know. There we go. We'll end the news there. So thanks everyone for listening. We don't have an outro for the music yet, for the news yet. So we
need an intro for the lore section. That's what we need. So
we've got to really segue. We've got no segue to go from the news to this, other than it's over. Deal with it. Now this is the news. And it sucks because I talk about a lot during the news, and now I'm going to go into something that I'm going to be talking a lot with. So once in a while, I'm going to have to throw it to Mark. He may not have a lot of substance in what we're talking about, but I need a breath. So it's really throwing to Mark just to give you some time to catch a breath.
Hey, I know a bit here. So, no, this is all really exciting for me. So,
Yeah.
But you know it much better than I do. You put this wonderful wiki together. So, again, I'll encourage everybody to go check out the Kings of War wiki. So, it is fantastic.
Actually, on that note, before we dive into it, I have put this all together, and I mean, it is off some work that people did for the fandom wiki. I did try and transfer a lot, but I've also created quite a lot myself. It's basically a one-man band at the moment. So if you do want to help, and I really am looking for help, regardless of how much you can give, we can obviously teach you at the scale that you need to be taught, or you help out where you can. We do have a Discord. If you go to the wiki under the community tab, there's a Discord that will go to a specific Discord that is just for the wiki. Not a lot of people on it. There's a few people in it. So if you do want to help out, jump in there. I've got my list of to do is very, very large. As you can see, I have to try and catalog all the books that have already come out to get anticipation for the new books coming out. We also have to plug in all the third edition stuff and all that stuff. So I'm doing bits and pieces over there, and I would love for people to help me out. I also look after the Warpath wiki, so warpathuniversewiki.com, and also the manticgameswiki.com as well. So I try and update everything. There's only so much I can do. So if you do want to help out, the door is always open. You can do as much or as little as you want. I can also teach you how to do it. It's really easy. It's basically, if you know how to type, you'll be able to do it. It's not as complicated as you think. It only gets complicated if you start doing complicated stuff, which we don't need to do at all. But if you want to help, feel free to reach out, because there's only so much I can do. And there's so much I want to update on the wiki, but it's just meaning to get to that point first, and that's the key. Anyway, so we're going to dive into one of the heroes, or the champions, Lethal Voidheart. Now, Lethal Voidheart didn't start off as Lethal Voidheart. She actually started off as Lethal Silverheart, is how she was built. Actually introduced into Kings of War 2nd Edition during the Edge of the Abyss campaign as Silverheart, and she's gone through the most change. So as we go through this, we'll basically explain how she went from Silverheart to now Voidheart. But she is one of those characters that has, she's been in Kings of War, she's been in League and Infamy, the board game, she's in Kings of War Champions, and she's also a hero you can actually select in Kings of War Vanguard as well. So she's all over the show, one of those characters that are on the table that hasn't really had a lot of novel about it, but has so much lore to her as well. Most of the time, a lot of the time people complain about Kings of War not having those iconic characters, those characters that stand out, that you refer to, when you think of Marvel, you think of Iron Man kind of deal. When you think of Kings of War, you don't really have those characters. We are starting to see those characters crop up. I think Lethal Voidheart is a good visually now character that you could point to, like, yeah, that's Kings of War, and now has quite a lot of lore behind it. Hopefully we get one from every faction coming up, like Garrick Hammerhand. Dwarves have a lot. Like free dwarves have Civi and Haneris and Bannock. Free dwarves have quite a lot. Dwarves have, Golok, and they have Garrick Hammerhand. But a lot of other characters don't. I mean, with halflings, you've got Aaron Cadwater, but visually there's no art for them, so you don't really know. But so if this is the reason why I want to bring Lethal up, because I think Lethal is one of those characters that when you think of Kings of War, you can really point towards this character being an important part of the look of Kings of War when you're trying to get people into it. So before we dive into it, Mark, what do you know, before Champions came out, what did you know about Lethal? Because you've been around Kings of War a lot longer than I have.
Right. Well, I mean, I knew that she had a short story, Curse of the Silver Heart, that everybody forgot about, but Rob Berman wrote this wonderful short story, and it was in one of the Mantic blogs. I forget when this came out. It was a while ago. So
it was actually in a newsletter, and we'll talk about that when we get into it. But it was one of those forgotten stories that was sent only in the newsletter. That when I was talking to Rob through Facebook, I was like, he mentioned this story, and I was like, I couldn't find anything. We used the Wayback Machine, still couldn't find it there. Eventually, I got him to find me the email, send it to me, and I've cataloged that on the wiki now. So the story that Mark's referring to, if you want to read it yourself, you can go on the wiki, and if you go look up Curse of the Silverheart, you can actually look up the short story. So it's one of those, I'm glad that we've got it, and now that people can read it for themselves, because Rob's put a lot of heart into that, and plays a huge part in Champion's story.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, I backed League of Infamy. So, we're in there. And so that's very interesting. they recycled the model in Dungeon Saga Origins. So you've got that. And then, of course, we got Voidheart. So, you talk about an iconic character. This is one that totally flies underneath the radar because it's grown as the game has grown. It's like one character that's been there and has a model and everything else. The one thing it's missing is the novel series, like Orion and Estelle. This is what we want. Well, we got it in Lethal Silverheart / Bleakheart / Voidheart. And those are the titles of 3 books, if you think about it. You know what I mean? And you could flesh that out. I mean, we really missed the boat on a trilogy here. So, but
I mean, to be honest, I don't think the boat's missed. I think it's just the lore now is there. So, I mean, it's not really going to be a spoiler-free book, but you definitely could flesh it out because as we go through this, you're going to learn that we don't know. There's the key things that we don't really know about Lethal, but really it's so disjointed about, when certain things happen, what happened between this point and that point, that there's definitely books. You could make a Voidheart, Bleakheart, Silverheart. Hell, you could even just call it this Silverheart. You could call the book Lethal, and the whole book is just split into 3 parts: the time where she's Silverheart, the time where she's Bleakheart, and the time that she's Voidheart, just as one novel. You could even make it as 3 mini novels contained within. I think there's a good potential to elaborate here, and as we go through it, you'll realize that it's definitely pieced together, and there's definitely more that we need to know. But it's also going to be interesting what's going to happen with her going forward, because she is definitely part of Champions, and where her story currently is going to lead to some interesting things, I think, going forward.
Well, the big thing, too, is Mantic has, told us that the Champions models are going to be in Kings of War 4th edition. So Voidheart is going to be part of it. Going to the game. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. So, but, yeah, maybe you could call it the Lethal trilogy and have Silverheart, right, Bleakheart, and Voidheart. That'd be great. So
yeah, I don't know if a trilogy could. I don't know 3 books. I think it would work as one novel, but with 3 parts, kind of deal.
You could do that too. Yeah,
I don't know 3. Yeah, I just don't know if there's enough meat when she was Silverheart versus when she was Bleakheart. But it really does depend on how they dive into it, because the period between when she was Bleakheart and when she was Voidheart, the gap isn't that large. So it'll be interesting to see if they could flesh it out. But yeah, completely understand where you're coming from on that one. And I think now that the look is more established, more unique with Voidheart, with the legs, I think it's becoming a more iconic character, which is why I want to talk about today. I think it'll be really interesting.
Absolutely. So where shall we start our journey?
All right, we'll start with establishing who Lethal Voidheart is. So Lethal Voidheart, and now we're just going to use her surname, so I don't say Lethal all the time, because eventually the pronunciation of me saying Lethal is going to change, and that would just be awkward because someone's going to bring that up in a few years. Voidheart was originally born as Lethal Silverheart. She was once an apprentice to an elven mage, and from what we know now, she has at least 3 sisters. That's Linneas Silverheart, Linnaeus Silverheart, Marcella Silverheart, and Tabitha Silverheart, and also an uncle called Catherine Silverheart. Now, I'm assuming she had a mother, assuming had a father. Doesn't really elaborate. That's the piece that we don't know, which, on this hypothetical novel that we're thinking about, could be elaborated on how her relationship with her family is, and how Catherine kind of came into her life, her uncle came into her life, because he does play a big part into why she ends up the way that she does. So the early life is when we don't really know how she grew up. All we know is that she was once an apprentice to an elven mage, kind of growing up in elven society when she was Silverheart. So while Silverheart was Silverheart in the elven culture, she was originally taught about the Void by her uncle. So her uncle had already is starting to dive into the Void. Now, the Void was illegal at that time. The Void kind of knowledge and text were all kind of locked away and hidden away. They weren't allowed to do it. You find out more about that in the Twilight Kin kind of backstory in the 2024 Clash of Kings. The information on the Void was very locked away. So this is very secret. So Silverheart was being taught about the Void from Catherine Silverheart, who actually lost his wife. So I'm assuming her aunt, before Silverheart was even born. And so he'd been trying to learn about the Void, trying to learn ways to bring her back. And then Silverheart wanted to help find her aunt using this Void magic. And as she was learning about the Void from Catherine, the whispers started to begin in her mind. So it was really the Void kind of talking to her and starting to manipulate her mind. This is the start of her going a little bit crazy. So the more she learned about the Void, the more the Void started calling to her and starting to pull her. During her learnings, she would gift a book to Catherine called The Whispers from the Void, which was actually banned within Elvenhome. So she got hold of this forbidden book, gave it to Catherine, and essentially that's the start of the journey that is Lethal Silverheart learning this particular thing. Now, between the years of 3,850 and 3,854, now this may throw you off a little bit, Mark. I'm really just doing it to get a breath. Do you know what significant event took place between the year 3,850 and 3,854?
I wish I was tied into the dates like you are, Dave, but my answer is no.
It was the Edge of the Abyss event. So the Edge of the Abyss took place over 4 years during that year and started in 3,850. If only we did a timeline episode on that, you might have remembered. Anyway, I'm ripping you off, and I'm going to keep on talking, so you can't tell me off for that. The Silverheart actually fought against the forces of evil, so she was on the elven side of things. Specifically to stop the ways from opening up in the Twilight Glade, so basically a portal to the Void. Unfortunately, she was unsuccessful and was driven mad by the Night Stalkers that managed to come out of the ways, as in the magic portals, and that's when she kind of started to really dive into the corruption. She wasn't fully corrupt yet, but that essentially was the tipping point of those whispers that had started with Catherine. She had now fully kind of leaned towards the Twilight Kin kind of crazy, but no one knew it yet. So in the year 3,854, this is around the time of the flooding of the Abyss, when the war was about to end. She met up with the Green Lady and other heroes that played a part in the Edge of the Abyss, like Nomarok, Domitus, Magnide, Arkal, Flexhoof, Ictor, and Jarvis. And they all came for a meeting, and that was about the flooding. Lethal brought the information that she found about the Night Stalkers in the Twilight Glades. Jarvis mentions that she believes that Lethal has turned to more dark magic than the Ophidians, which caused Lethal to lunge at him with a silver dagger and try and kill him. So Jarvis actually saw that corruption that was inside of Lethal, made a point of it, and she decided to counter that argument with trying to kill him with a silver dagger, which I don't think would have worked very well, because if you're trying to prove you're not evil, killing somebody is not a really good way of proving that you're not evil. But that was her go at it. Unfortunately, one of Jarvis's Baronites managed to pull him back and use a shield to block Lethal's attack, which after that she slunk back into her previous position at the table. So she was showing her losing it at the table during the flooding of the Abyss. The Green Lady informed the plan to flood the Ogre lands in order to flood the Abyss openings, as the alternative would be the forces of Abyss just essentially running rampant. Ictor informed that a powerful item that they'll use to melt the frozen sea, I believe that was the Eye of the Abyss, which flooded the openings of the Abyss in the Ogre lands, and Numbergrok left to inform his people to begin to leave the homelands before the flooding began. We do know in the Champions that wasn't 100% successful, of him leaving to tell people to leave, the ogres to leave, because that was one of the origin stories of, I can't remember her name, the champions, the ogre champion from Champions.
Oh yeah, Argo something or other. Yeah.
She had a flashback. It was the flooding actually occurring, so obviously that wasn't 100% successful, which is why Nomargrok is known as this betrayer, because he agreed to flood it. But to be honest, it makes sense, because if they didn't do that, bad things would have happened. Of that flooding. But yeah, that's where it is. So at that time, Lethal clearly had been losing it. those whispers had been getting louder and louder, and she was starting to turn. And that was with second edition. So that was Edge of the Abyss was the first time we found out about Lethal. Not the first time we know about their history in her timeline, because the Curse of the Silver Heart was released later than this, but it clearly shows that progression of her slipping into a bit of madness and bit of crazy there. How much of that did you know there, Mark?
Well, I knew a bit of it, so, as far as that goes. I mean, only because, you've got it fresher, I got to say. I mean, I played in the campaign and read all that how many years ago. So, and Jarvis is the man. So if there's a novel series I want to see, it's Jarvis. So
yeah, I know Rob Berman had really big plans for Jarvis, and I think it was just got put on the back burner. So hopefully now that he's back in the fold with Champions, we might get a little bit more than that. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, and I know Jarvis just wanted to do the Ophidians and stuff like that, but I think it would be really cool to bring back a character into Champions. So if they refresh the range and maybe they do like a good undead, or somehow if the Ophidians are tied in, I know he's not an Ophidian, but I still think it would be kind of cool.
He's a lover of Ophidian, yeah.
Yeah, he's a lover of Ophidia, but, maybe he actually gets some. And that's not as crazy because, our leader of the Northern Alliance faction is secretly an abyssal dwarf. Sorry for the spoiler. But, so I don't see it crazy that Jarvis finally gets the opportunity to lead some of his favored lore and the Ophidians into battle in Champions. I think that would be cool. So, and it'd be cool if he got a new model and things like that. My brain could go wild with this, but that was my favorite part of Edge of the Abyss. So, yeah, and I loved all the characters. I bought them and I got them. Actor in particular showed me that placoderms are cool, and I needed a bunch of them. So, I'm still waiting, Mantic. But yeah, very cool. I love that story for Edge of the Abyss too. So.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The story's good, and a lot of people forget that the follow-on of that story was in the Clash of Kings 2018 book. Actually had the after effects of all the flooding and everything. It actually took place around that time of the flooding. So there's a lot of gaps that are filled in for that. Lethal's not mentioned, unfortunately, in that little follow-up story, but it does lead to things that have. The flooding of the Abyss and therefore the Edge of the Abyss event still affected the world quite a lot, and I think it's one of the biggest events that lore and on the table has had since. The Shadowed Horizons didn't really have an effect, or the Harpy's Rift is probably the closest one to have this massive impact. But yeah, it definitely left its scars during that event. And with the Edge of the Abyss, we also got a lot of characters that were introduced for the first time, like Bannock. I think it was Bannock. I've got the book right here. I think it was Bannock that was introduced. Bannock was introduced for the first time, who's in Pride of the King now. We also had Flex, who I think was a really good character. Grogger was introduced in this one as well.
He was mentioned. He didn't get a model, but Grogger was
he did get a model, but he's in there. And Jarvis, obviously, and we have Dravak as well. Dravak Dalkin. He was the first time he was in there. He caused the Harpy's Rift as well. So we got a few first off characters, and then we also got Krogoth as well, the elemental that Bannock has.
Namagarok's in there, so
a lot of.
It was a really good book.
And I do hope that eventually the lore gets popular enough that maybe we can get an author to go back and actually write a novel on these events, and instead of needing the source book, which is getting harder and harder to obtain because obviously they don't have the digital copy of it anymore. A lot of people are missing the story that has such an influence on the world that maybe someone can go back, take all the information about the Edge of the Abyss, make a bit of a digestible novel about it, because the Green Lady has a huge impact on the story and how she got involved, and how essentially the ogres their homelands were completely flooded and decimated, which nowadays it's still having an effect. It's a really cool story, and I really hope they actually dive into it in the future. But yeah, on that tangent, we'll move on to what happens after the flooding. So post the Edge of the Abyss, the Night Stalker forces continue to talk to Lethal, and she essentially began diving further and further into the forbidden tomes of the Twilight Kingdom. Essentially, now she's converted over to Bleak, now known as Bleakheart, the Thal Bleakheart. And it was around about this time, it is rumored, and this is actually the newest piece of lore that I only found out like a week ago, that her sisters, Lannis Silverheart, Marcella Silverheart, and Tabitha Silverheart, they went missing around this time when she kind of dived towards the Twilight Kingdom, so became Bleakheart, as she pledged herself to the void. A short while later, after these three sisters went missing, all of a sudden, Lothal, or I should say Bleakheart, was followed by the Void Sisters, which appeared alongside her, assisting on missions that the Twilight can center on. So it's not confirmed that they're the Void Sisters. So the Void Sisters are, you could say, a unit that is in the Lothal Champion box. So if you got that yourself, looking at the Void Sisters, it is suspected that those three are her sisters that she managed to convert. So it's definitely a family affair. First, her uncle convinces her to do it, and now she's got her three sisters. Don't know whether the older sisters or younger sisters. It's not really established, but the three sisters, how it looks like they have converted, or at least their souls, how it looks like have been converted to the Void Sisters. Because you've got the company box, Mark? Did you realize that connection there? Did you see that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's on the lore in the back of the card. So
that's how I found out. It's the only place ever her sisters have been mentioned by name and what happened to them. So it's a very small part of the lore that could be missed out elsewhere.
Well, that just shows you how power packed some of the lore is in Champions. It just in that little paragraph, or two that are on the back of the cards. So there's some great stuff in there. But it makes some sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, now we've got the sisters there. And then, of course, her uncle is mentioned in the lore for Champions as well. That one's in the rule book, I think. And so, yeah, you've got that all together. And it's just very cool to watch this character just kind of evolve. So, again. So I think part of the fun thing was... back when she was rising with the Bleakheart, back in the day when she was arrested trying to steal eyeballs.
That's the next bit. You've reached just with the next bit. So, the next bit is a combination of the Curse of the Silverheart story and also the League of Infinity, specifically the Primavera Pilgrim, which is it came with the Kickstarter, which I actually ordered the League of Infinity box set, and this was included in it. So I was very thankful. I don't know if they did deliberately or not, but I was very thankful for this to be included because it's actually just a news article within that book of what happens next, plus that short story combining the two. So Lothal, which is she's now changed her name to Lothal Bleakheart, was arrested for trying to steal eyeballs from the Wall-Deep School of Autonomy. It is rumored that she was seen eating these stolen eyes at the time. The stolen eyes could have been eyes of something that gave her a little bit extra power. During that time, Lothal reached out to her uncle, Catherine Silverheart, after she was cast out for being hunted. So while she was being hunted, she reached out to him, and together they created this library. You only could enter it, this little kind of dimension, you could say. They created this library full of forbidden magic books and information. So all those books that were stealing, all the books they find, they were able to open this little dimension and build this little library, and they were kind of storing all that forbidden magic in that library. So that's how she can continue to learn more, continue to get a little bit more powerful. Inquisitors during this time, including Talrol Truebreeze. Got it. Messed that up. Was sent to arrest Bleakheart. Bleakheart fought hard against these Inquisitors who have been sent, killing many, and were eventually subdued and arrested. So I should have put this more into the story, but effectively the Inquisitors found where her uncle was living. They went out to confront. Actually, no. I've messed up the where this is, but don't worry. Yeah, but either way, that they went out to a town called Yondril, and they were investigating reports of butchered livestock around the town and reporting dark dreams that were haunting the residents. So the Inquisitors went out there. They hunted down Catherine Silverheart, and essentially they said, where's Bleakheart? Where is she? You've got this infamous name. Silverheart was now a bit of a like the best comparison I have is that if your surname was Trump, kind of deal, you want to sometimes just connect yourself a little bit from that family. It's kind of that's the feeling people had, is like that people wanted to stay away from the word Silverheart, because everyone knew the minute you heard Silverheart, you knew exactly what that meant. So they found Catherine, and started to inquire, what happened, or do you know where Bleakheart is? Catherine became a little bit defensive when the name of Silverheart was used, because Lethal's name is now Bleakheart, and they should be calling her Bleakheart, because he's very defensive of her. It's like, you respect her. And then all of a sudden, as that discussion was happening and Catherine was getting a little bit angry, a strange fog came over the town, and Catherine created a portal which he went through, which was the library. He darted into the library and closed it behind him, and shot Catherine and another one called Carterel, which is two Inquisitors. They quickly ran out of the house and discovered the town had now been overtaken by Night Stalkers. Catherine sent his buddy Carterel to escape to a town called Athana, and warn them of Catherine Silverheart working now with Bleakheart, because they knew he was her uncle, but didn't know that they actually were working in cahoots with each other. Tyrell continued to fight the Night Stalkers. He stayed behind to try and help the village that was now had been overrun, until Bleakheart actually arrived through a portal of her own. She was cheerful to see Lethal, reminding Lethal of the scar that Bleakheart gave her last time they met. So when she was actually captured earlier after stealing those eyes by Breeze, I should say, and then locked up as well. And I've kind of messed this up a little bit for myself, but I'm going to try and save this. But yeah, they left a scar on her face. And Carol told her she would not escape this time, while Bleakheart brought more Night Stalker forces through the portal that she arrived through. It is assumed that's where the short story actually ended, The Curse of the Silverheart. It is assumed that Bleakheart survived the battle, because she does exist later in the story, to the timeline. So not sure if Tyrell died or not. But essentially, that she looks like she had at least survived that particular encounter. Now, actually, before that, and this is why I got a little bit confused, because I thought I mistyped something. After she got initially captured after stealing the eyes, and Lethal kind of captured her, put the scar on her face, and locked her up, she was locked up in the Elverhome prison, so that's the capital of the elves. She managed to escape that prison and then headed east towards the Twilight Glades, with a breakout noted in the newspaper. While she was traveling to the Glades, that's when she was recruited to the League of Infamy. So this is the League of Infamy takes place around about this time. She met up with Sharkclaw, Gut Peeler, Karzal, Runesblade, Glum, Slitter, Creep, and Miwinjaji. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And also Methathena Aveld. In a pub called the Rat and Dagger, which it's actually a tavern, alongside a man known as the Merchant, who was the one that kind of orchestrated their recruitment and getting together for this mission. So while she had escaped prison, she bumped into the League of Infamy. I'm a bit disappointed because there was a book going to be coming out called Tales of Mantic, Shadows of Infamy, which would actually have gone through more of the League of Infamy story, divided into this underground organization, and find out a little bit more. We might have actually found out a little bit more how she got recruited while she was escaping, considering she just wanted to leave, but it doesn't really explain why she kind of was, it seems like, more forced to be part of the League of Infamy. It could be just also a money thing of just like needing the resources to try and get to escape to the Alvin King. But yeah, effectively that's when the League of Infamy takes place. So the League of Infamy instructed the Bleakheart, along with everyone else, to steal some Draken eggs from the Draken breeding center, which is operated by the elves, with Nathaniel, Mel, we'll call him Mel the vampire, leading that operation, and it ends up being successful, and then eventually she leaves to join the Twilight Kin. That's when the story that I just explained about the town being attacked by Night Stalkers actually take place. So I kind of got a little bit all over the show. And right here, we're actually going to pause it and chuck it to Mark to make sure that all made sense. Did all that make sense, Mark?
It absolutely made sense. So, and it's a great story. That's why I said we should be able to expand that a little bit. So, but yeah.
I think the key thing is figuring out, how that timeline works. So why she stole the eyes, we don't really know. We know she stole the eyes, and it was rumored to be eating them. Whether she actually did or not, I don't know. But she stole the eyes, which there was a reason for that. Got captured, and then she escaped and joined the League of Infamy. So all this is a little bit vague and doesn't really make too much sense because we don't really know why. We don't know why she joined the League of Infamy after she escaped. Could be just to be in hiding, but it also doesn't make sense for her to agree to do a job. So there's a lot of questions here that could be elaborated on.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I said that there's some story here. So, and, and Melantha or Arveld or whatever pronunciation we're giving her, she showed up in the vault last month. So
yeah, she did. She did.
Yeah. So her model is available, which is very, very cool. So, but yeah.
And Shadows of Infamy was going to be about her as well. Because she's a vampire who leads the League of Infamy, or assumed that she leads the League of Infamy. And I think Shadows and Infamy was going to be all about that. It was originally going to be written by Mark Langworthy. This was a very long time ago, around about when League of Infamy was going to come out. Unfortunately, it was cancelled, and it's one of those lost stories. But I would still be curious about a League of Infamy novel.
Is that the book that Mark Langworthy was going to write?
Correct.
That was from the Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. You know what? I knew there was a novel, but I didn't know the name of it. I didn't even know if it was named or not. So.
Yeah, Shadows and Infamy at least was the working title that it was given before it was cancelled. And it was also noted to tie directly into the Kings of War RPG, which is a story in itself. And I would love if anyone is out there and wants to do a MUP episode on the story of the Kings of War RPG and what happened with that, reach out, because I would love for someone to break down that whole saga, because it may be a little bit tragic, but it's also a piece of, you could say, Mantic lore, in terms of its production of what actually happened with that.
Well, I'll be happy to be part of that, because I was doing the Countercharge RPG show, and so with Nate Arnold, and we were right in the center of that storm. So absolutely, there was a lot going on with that. So
it was before my time.
We had Mark Langworthy on the show quite a few times. So. He was like one of our key guests as we were working on it and trying to get through some of the preview material. So maybe we can get Nathan to join us.
Yeah, I mean, we could. I mean, it'll be really good because I don't know enough I know about what happens. I think from the outset of what I do know, and we're being very vague about it because I feel like we need to do it justice if we do talk about it. I do think it's a little bit of a tragic story of what happens, and it's definitely a case of sometimes life happens and things get on top of us all. And I think if anyone is out there that knows a lot about it, wants to do a bit of an episode on it, looks like Mark is keen to help out with it, and I'll be keen to come in there as a dummy that asks the questions. So maybe one day we'll park that idea.
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to do that. That is absolutely something I would do. So I'd love to discuss that further. It was tragic, by the way. So
yeah, it was tragic. Yeah.
Oh,
wow. So we'll jump back into the story of Miss Bleakheart.
Hey, everybody. This is Mike Rossi, Winged Hussar's second best dwarf author, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast.
This is Fred, reminding you to visit the Kings of War forum, kowforum.com. No ads, no commercials. That's kowforum.com.
Now, this bit of the story, there's a bit of a jump. Could be even a time jump because we don't actually know when Shadow Horizons actually takes place, but the next part of the story is her involvement with Shadow Horizons, which was a summer campaign, I think in 2023, if memory serves me right. And yeah, it was for those that are unfamiliar, because we haven't had one for a while, we might have some new people out there. Once in a while, Mantic do summer campaigns where you basically can influence the story, and you play campaigns, you submit the results, and either the one side wins or the other side wins, and that's how the story is written into lore concrete. And the next chapter is released, and we saw that with Harpy's Rift. We saw that. Well, I think the first one they ever did was Edge of the Abyss. You may correct me if I'm wrong there, Mark, but I think Edge of the Abyss was the first one where they did a summer campaign like that. And Shadow Horizons was a similar one. I think this one had a little bit less impact. And I don't really understand the story completely of Shadow Horizons. I'm trying to get my head around it, but either way. This was the first. Shadow Horizons was basically the Twilight Kin attempting to attack. I think the North, or trying to bring through more forces from the Void.
They were trying to avoid, invade the North there and go after Chill, and that's where the big story came in. What is Talon are hiding in Chill?
Correct. That's what Champions is about as well. Something up in the North is being held there in Chill. But we're not sure whether it could be related to the war with Winter, how Winter vanished after she was kind of defeated. Is it because he's actually got Winter locked up there and they're kind of feeding out Aurora? Aurora is the kind of rumored name for Winter's other half, is helping contain her up north, and there's a few questions around that. But essentially that's what Shadow Horizons is. One day I'm going to sit down and figure out the proper story to make it actually make sense so I can write it all down. But effectively that's when Bleakheart joins back into the story. So Bleakheart officially joined the Twilight Kin during the end of the the League of Infamy stuff, and Shadow Horizons. Once her uncle kind of escapes as well, so she's joined and appears to Arlantrix. Yeah, next appears to Arlantrix, was the Twilight Kin who was fighting alongside of the Abyssal Dwarfs against the Basileans in the Low Seas. So there was a force of Abyssal Dwarfs that were carrying a Shadow Gem, which was going to basically open a portal up in the north to allow all the Void forces to come through. So Altrix was carrying the Shadow Gem on these ships, and what they were going to do is try and get through Goldenhorn. So there's a little gap in Goldenhorn. It's kind of like a passage. It's kind of like the Pannithor Canal, or that canal that that ship got stuck into, that cargo ship got stuck and held everything up. It's kind of that equivalent. Is that little gap there is so important. But Basileans aren't going to let their enemies go through. They're not going to let the Abyssal Dwarfs just coast through, or the Twilight Kin coast through, or anything. So the Twilight Kin had teamed up with the Abyssal Dwarfs on their ships, and they essentially attacked their Goldenhorn to try and get through that and sail up north, to get past that and then go sail up north towards Chill, effectively. So as they were coming onto it, we'll go Arlantrix. Yeah, I'm trying to get the name right. Arlantrix asked or contacted Lothal and asked, "Hey, you said you were going to help us. We're heading into Goldenhorn. We're heading up to Goldenhorn now. Our forces aren't strong enough to beat them on ourselves. Essentially, you're taking on the capital city of the Basileans. What are you going to do?" And asked where those forces are, with Altrix expecting to use them to break through those forces, and she was getting a bit of flack from the Abyssal Dwarfs asking where they were. Bleakheart informed that she didn't promise she did not promise the fleet. Did not promise the Abyssal Dwarfs forces or a fleet of ships to help them. Only a distraction. Altrix became a little bit concerned what that actually meant, because she was talking to her through to a visual aid. It was like a hologram, or kind of a spirit, kind of ethereal kind of communication. And Altrix was starting to get a little bit desperate, saying, what are you talking about? And then noted suddenly there was a big explosion around the tolls, or around that barrier that they were actually heading towards. and it turns out the Twilight Kin had infiltrated the Basilian Golden Horn guards and essentially blew on it up. They blew up the gate to allow them to break through, and effectively they managed to get through the gate, even though I believe in the campaign they lost this particular conflict in terms of how I said it could influence the story. They did lose that particular moment, but they still got through. But essentially they were heavily beaten. They were heavily significantly impacted, and their forces, the Abyssal Dwarf forces, were greatly diminished, with most of the fleet actually getting destroyed. With Alterix exiting the story around about now, and it picks up again with Bleakheart having the Shadow Gem. So somehow between then and later on in the story, they met up and passed the Shadow Gem onto Bleakheart. So Bleakheart now has the Shadow Gem as they sailed towards the Winterlands, with now a Twilight Kin kind of fleet taking it. So they kind of like passed the baton. So they kind of lost the fight, passed the baton. I believe the Abyssal Dwarfs kind of got killed, but passed the baton and continued on. There was a short story called On Tolls of War that talk about that Basilian conflict. There's also another short story called On Cold Ties, which tells the story about what I just said about getting the Shadow Gem. During this time, Bleakheart accounted for the battles from the last few days and watched their fleet struggle to the destination. So essentially they got their ass a little bit kicked, and they're a bit battled and bruised as they entered in the Winterlands up north as they continued to sail that one. But, however, Bleakheart reminded herself of the Second Fleet, which was contained within the Void, and then finally reached her destination on Iceblood Coast in the Winterlands. So they were battered and bruised and eventually landed on the Iceblood Coast and trying to get to their destination because there's a particular location in the Winterlands that they want to be at to, one, bring all their forces through, and because it's very cold up there, they don't want the distance between Chill and the portals to be too large, otherwise their forces essentially will suffer before they can actually get to Chill and be weaker, and then effectively they will lose. So they want to get as close, they want to get to this particular point. But what the campaign did, actually, Mark, did you take place in that campaign, the Shadowed Horizons campaign?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I tried to participate in all of them. So, what's that?
Which side were you on?
Oh, I was on the side of the Chill. I wasn't, avoiding, working with the
Void
Stalkers or the Void or the Twilight Kin. Even though I bought a huge Twilight Kin army while I was at UK Clash of Kings in 2023, I came home with a huge pile of Twilight Kin stuff. So ordered. It actually got shipped to me. So, but no, I was rooting for the good guys.
Well, your help did help because they ended up getting battered and bruised, and essentially, they landed on the Iceblood Coast with a shorter force, which a lot of people complained. It looks like I've tried to go back in time and find some of their commentary around it. Some people were a bit upset that they didn't stop them, that they still managed to get there. But I would say, for those that are a little bit upset, that the influence on the story is effectively, that point I was telling you about, they were needing to get to a particular point so their forces weren't too diminished by the time they attacked Chill. The consequences of them losing, effectively, their forces weren't strong enough to get to that point. So effectively, they had to open the portal early. So that's why, effectively, the forces of good won the overall, is because their forces, the evil forces, weren't strong enough to be as strong as possible to actually defeat Chill. So ultimately, Bleakheart stepped upon the shore, and this is all contained with the story Landfall. So all these short stories, I have a link to on the wiki. So if you look up the short stories, look up Lethal Voidheart. I'll put all the links down below. You can go there, you can click it. I've tried to archive a few things as well, but you should be able to find these short stories if you do want to read them. Anyway, Bleakheart stepped upon the shore of the Iceblood Coast, holding that Shadow Gem more than 100 leagues away from what the original intended land site on the Iceblood Ford was supposed to be. So This is what I was talking about. They couldn't get to the actual point because they were too decimated. Despite this, she casted the Shadow Heart gem into the sky, hoping they were close enough, and the Shadow Heart glowed with light, giving off lightning and mass energy, resulting the opening of a great void gate, which Bleakheart stared into with awe. One of our fellow captains was growing impatient as the force had not arrived through yet. They were kind of just sitting there waiting. Bleakheart insisted they were coming with the delay due to the distance from the locus of the Void Cage network. That was another reason why they wanted to be at that particular point, because their energies was the strongest at that point. So because of the distance of being a few hundred leagues away, it was taking a bit of time. Her crew was stuck with nausea as they waited, because the energy from the void portal doesn't really sit well for those that aren't really ingrained into the void. So some of them were getting sick. A lot of them moved away from the open void gate until it had subsided. The hidden Twilight King finally began to arrive through the void gate, and it was led by Lord Mikhail Farewell. Mikhail. Do you know who Lord Mikhail Farewell is?
Is that our big, I call him Mikhail, but
Miguel, yeah,
that should be our guy. Yeah, he's
Miguel.
been around. He's also a character that's been around since first edition, and
correct.
Has
doesn't look as cool in first edition than he does now. I think the model they have now is a lot cooler.
His model was so disproportionate to the size of all the other ones. So, but
correct,
I just he was a larger than life character, so to speak. So that's why I chalked it up too. So, but I think I have 2 of those models floating around the house. So
it's a cool looking model, and I suggest anyone that is into the Twilight King look at that model. And he's got really good lore. It's one of those projects that I've put to the side of. I'm slowly fleshing out his particular one. I've written some of it. He's actually got a wife. A lot of people don't know he had a wife who died, and I'm kind of elaborating more on that on the wiki, slowly building it out. A lot of that information is contained within the Clash of Kings 2024 book, but that's a character for another time. We'll talk about that another time. But yes, you've got the right one in your head. And so Miguel comes through the portal, and Miguel was upset of the Void Gate being so far away from the intended target. And he and the impatient captain from before, insisting the cause being their warship was just too badly damaged to make the journey there. However, Lord Miguel quickly silenced him and signaled to his mount, Morgulzir, that horse that he rides. Again, it's another that horse has existed since first edition. It was actually called this Morguzel. I'm not sure. I'm going to say Morguzel. Morguzel essentially ate that impatient captain. He signaled to it to go eat him. So it turns out these creatures do eat flesh. So that's great. Morguzel came forward, ended the captain's life, and then Lord Miguel then turned to Bleakheart for an explanation. Bleakheart explained that over the recent events that occurred of them sailing up there, they got their ass handed to them, badly beaten, and pointed out that Lord Miguel was still in the Winterlands as planned. So their plan did work. They're in the Winterlands. Yeah, they're not exactly at their point that they need to be, but they shouldn't complain. At least we got here. Unfortunately, Lord Miguel stated that the original plan was for an internal void bridge to be opened in the Iceblood Forge, which would be a defensible site for a great planned fortress. So the reason why they wanted to be at the particular target location, so they can actually put down fortifications, build a massive fortress, keep those forces coming through the void portal, and so they can lay an attack on Chill. Unfortunately, and this would be because the Forces of Good won the summer campaign. There's the reason why this is the outcome of the Forces of Good winning, is that they were unable to establish a permanent base up there. And Lord Miguel also then reached into his dark violet cloak and produced a metal scroll cylinder which contained a scroll. Bleakheart was then banished through the Void Gate and was told to wait until the guests arrived to give the scroll to. She was to tell them exactly what is written on that scroll, and reluctantly she took the scroll, walked through the portal, and then the portal closed. So that's essentially Miguel banished her to the Void, and that's when we enter the champions side of the story. So I'm going to pause right there. Mark, does all that make sense so far?
Absolutely. And yeah, we're starting to track into the champions part of the story. So
Correct. So this is the last bit of the story that we have so far. So Bleakheart was trapped in the void for an unspecified amount of time, and she had vague memories of what she had actually achieved while she was there, which may or may not have occurred. It's very vague about what actually did happen. She did recall helping a group of dwarfs being trapped within the void, but also remembered killing them while laughing when she plunged a dagger into their flesh. So what actually happened there, who knows? She also remembered that she once had the scroll from Lord Miguel. However, no longer has that scroll, and unsure if she delivered it or she destroyed it. So we don't actually know what happened with that scroll. It's like a story point where they just went, oh yeah, not sure what happened there. It's gone. She also saw through the void as she was traveling through the void. She saw multiple different versions of herself within the void, including versions of her dying, and they all were kind of fighting for a piece of the soul. So when you're trapped in the void, your soul is kind of getting jumbled up. Your mind's going all weird realities, which version of yourself you actually are. It's getting distorted. The longer you're in the void, the more kind of you lose it of your own personal identity. So during the time in the void, she had also encountered Captain Grimdance, a former captain of a Twilight Kin slaver ship, who would be the only person she would trust during the journey in the void. Grimdance would be able to navigate the void just as easily as the Infant Sea. So while she was in there, and Captain Grimdance is in the Champions box set, and this is where I found some of that lore is actually buried there. She actually met Grimdance there. And Grimdance would come back later in the story. So Bleakheart was driven forward by the thought of vengeance against Lord Miguel. So while she was in the void, the one thing that she did hold on to was the reason why she was there. She was banished by Lord Miguel, was kind of pissed off that she was banished in this void. And while she was traveling on a void skiff, she would come across a door. So I'm assuming it's the skiff that the Grimdance was kind of sailing for her. Eventually, she would come across a door. Bleakheart kind of moved towards the door and opened it and revealed that library that we talked about that she had created with her uncle. And it turns out her uncle was within that door. He was actually within that library. So eventually Bleakheart kind of walked through the door, saw her uncle, but her uncle's appearance had now changed. It was now a large yellow eye twitching and swiveling in his chest. Kind of like what you see in World of Warcraft. You kind of see these old gods and their eyes are kind of twitching, kind of looking everywhere. You're kind of seeing that here, that there's a huge eye now in his chest. Catherine Silverheart had sensed that Bleakheart was being held captive in the void, so somehow he kind of got some kind of indication she was locked here, and then gave her a scroll which told her how to escape. The scroll stated that a sacrifice would be needed, suggesting that Bleakheart could find. Then Catherine kind of suggested, Catherine suggested she could find a poor soul that was in the void, use them to sacrifice in order to use this. Use the scroll to get out of the void. However, Bleakheart quickly slashed his neck, killing him, and using his blood for that. He ended up being the sacrifice. So she didn't have any emotional attachment at this point. She had been so ripped apart by the void, or I'm assuming by the void or by all her actions previously, so that now she killed the uncle who introduced her to the void, and she used the blood for the incantation. That incantation showed many different versions of Bleakheart as she was using it, and showed glimpses of the power she could use one day. So it gave a little hints of how more powerful she could actually become. And then her body started to get deformed. So this is when she was going from Bleakheart to Voidheart. So Voidheart, all the Night Stalker legs were coming and ripping apart. Her body was being changed into this more monstrous form. And essentially she became the soul Voidheart. This led to a blinding all of a sudden flash, and she passed out, and she was then thrown into the mortal world, and eventually awoke and observed her new Night Stalker body when she woke up. Short while later, she gathered up her forces, such as Captain Grimdance, which assumed had come back through the void, and also the Void Sisters, which may or may not be her own sisters, Lannis Silverheart, Marcella Silverheart, and Tabitha Silverheart, And then she began her quest for vengeance against Lord Miguel, because essentially Miguel threw her into the void, and that's probably why she's going to be traveling up north to try and find Miguel, because that was the last place that she saw her, and saw him, and that's the current place of her story. The end for now. Well, what do you think of all that, Mark?
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. The end for now. Yeah, but I think it's a great story, and I'm looking forward to it being fleshed out a little bit. I kind of felt bad for her uncle, but during that, it's like, oh, dude, you're helping her, and the next thing you know, she kills you. So
yeah, and keep in mind, her uncle only wanted to find ways to bring back his dead wife, who died before she was even born. So
yeah, it's a little sad, but she's messed up. Silverheart, Bleakheart, Voidheart, right? So she's got all these super cool spider legs and everything now. So that's a lot to process.
It is,
so
indeed.
I can kind of see where she'd go a little crazy on it, but it's still kind of, I was just sorry.
It was her uncle's fault. It was her uncle's fault she went crazy, because he introduced her to the void. That's when the whispers began, and it essentially was an escalation thing. It just got worse and worse and worse, and now she is who she is now. Yeah,
I know. I still felt bad for her.
Yeah, I mean, most good villains have a sense of tragedy to them, and I think that's a big narrative thing of some of the most interesting villains in the world, in stories, I should say, not in the world. Most interesting villains in history of story making is the ones that have a tragic kind of beginning. And we see it all the time, especially, a good indication is a lot of Marvel stuff, just to rope it back to a franchise. A lot of Marvel villains are sometimes the best villains because of that, their history they have that got them there. I think it's worth to go through a few things we should note. Lothal Voidheart is one of those characters you can actually still get both versions of on the Mantic website, so you can actually still get the League of Infamy box, which will have Lothal Bleakheart in it, but you also can get Lothal Voidheart in the Champions box, so you can actually get both still. And I found that interesting, the fact you can still get two, and so you can play Lothal Bleakheart in 3rd edition currently at the moment, but we know Voidheart will be 4th edition. So in 2nd edition, you could play Lothal Silverheart. In 3rd edition, you could play Lothal Bleakheart. And supposedly in 4th edition, you'll play Lothal Voidheart. So with every edition, we get another Lothal. So it'd be interesting to see if 5th edition, if we're still around for 5th edition, whether we'll get another Lothal with 5th edition.
Well, sure, why not? So, but
what would you call it? Lothal Voidheart.
Who knows? They got to find something. Abyss Heart, I guess you could plunge her in the abyss, or,
make it some Abyss
that.
one.
So, some kind of Abyss label thing. Why not? She hasn't been there yet. So we got to, she could go visit over there. We also don't know who our new faction is. So, maybe they got a particular, torture / bad place for her to go that could even twist her even more. So,
or she could go the other way. It could be a case of they have found that maybe she is some kind of chosen character from the Night Stalkers. So the Night Stalkers have seen Lothal many years ago, have been manipulating her life to become here, and then eventually that is discovered. I think very similar to, again, I'll go to World of Warcraft because it's a good one. What's the... okay. I'm trying to think of what was the
I am worthless when it comes to World of Warcraft. I did not do that. So,
well, I'm trying to think of the Forsaken character, Sylvanas. How she was essentially, Lothal was very much like Sylvanas, who was essentially, she was a normal elf. She died and was resurrected as a banshee, and then she became this evil kind of character, and then kind of escalated to being completely evil. We could see Lothal kind of go completely evil, but then somehow it was found out that she was being manipulated the whole time, and there was a way to actually take out or reverse that manipulation. And maybe she comes back to the side of good, realizing what she's done and trying to essentially make it right. So she's looking for redemption. She could be a Lothal redemption heart or redeem heart or something like that. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where we go with this, and also how she plays a part in the Champions story. And I don't know actually how we're going to get that narrative when it comes to Champions. I know that they're kind of toying with this idea they're going to be releasing something. I don't know if it's a book. We obviously know we're going to get Axel in that book, in the Siege of Cullenspire. We know Axel's going to be in that, but we're going to get short stories. How are we going to go about this? There's definitely something cooking with Lothal. So I'm hoping that this episode has given some people a little bit more appreciation with the history that has taken place so far in the story.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there's more to be written here. So, I mean, they've been writing her, I don't want to say covertly, but, on the low level, for quite a long time. And if you picked up on it, it was kind of a cool journey. So, and you can go back and take that journey, all these little pieces. I would suggest you start with the wiki, and then you can work through. And then you've also got all of your source material spelled out and linked. So that'd be a good way to do it too.
Some is not accessible, unfortunately, such as you have to buy the Champions box to get those cards. The Edge of the Abyss, I don't think you can get a digital copy, and the League of Infamy, I don't think there's a digital copy for that. But I've tried to catalog as much as I can. I obviously have my own copies, but you can read the short stories. I've just counted it. There's 9 different pieces of source material here that add to the story, which is quite a lot. I think it's the most I have for any character, of 9 different sources. So we've got the Curse of the Silverheart short story. We've got the Edge of the Abyss book. We've got the Lothal Voidheart company box. We've got the League of Infamy, the Pervader Pilgrim book. We've also got the League of Infamy rule book. We've also got the short story Shadow Horizon Tools of War, On Cold Tides, and also Landfall. And then we got the Champions rule book. So there's 9 pieces that all this information has come from, which I think is the most out of all of them, I think.
I was just going to ask you, this has got to be it. Do you remember any other character or thing in the lore that's got this much reference material?
I would say the closest one in terms of like the distance between the current lore and what was, and the oldest lore, you could say. I would say it would be Garrick. Garrick's probably the closest one, because Garrick has got something from the Mantic Journal, all those years ago, before even first edition came out, and he's in the first edition book, he's in Kings and Legends, he's in the Mantic Journal, and he's in Pride of the King, and he's in Argument of Stone now, so that's 5. You could say he's in all the rule books as well, but I mean it's pretty much just rehashes what's in the first edition rule book. So that's about 7 if you include the rule books, 5 if you don't. So 5 is a lot. So 9, not quite sure. I'm sure there's 1, probably Golok, but I mean, there's not really a lot to go on that. Maybe Royden. Maybe Royden. I'm thinking maybe the Fab 4, as I call them, the Dungeon Saga 4 guys. They've got a little bit, because they did have a novel, which I think is not really in canon now, because you got Royden, which is Dungeon Saga Origins. You got the Trial of Tyranny, and then you got the Glimmer of Greed. Then you got Daughters of Doom. Then you got Mirrors of Malice, that's 4. And then you got Darkness of Dias, that's 5. Then you got the original Dungeon Saga, which is a Dwarf King's Quest, that's 6. Then you got Dungeon Saga, The Return of Valador, so that's 7. Then you got Destiny of Kings, that's 8. And then you got Pride of the King, which is 9, and he's actually going to be an Argument of Stone 2, so that's 10. So I say Royden wins it. Probably Royden wins it.
Well, okay. Going away. It sounds like another episode.
Yeah, Royden would have to be another. Well, the Fab 4 could be another episode, but I think we'll just do character after character. So if anyone out there, you have a particular character you want us to dissect, let us know, because what I typically do, and as I've done with this one, is if I know we're going to do an episode on it, I will basically put all my effort into updating that Wikipedia page. I'll not Wikipedia, so the Kings of War wiki page. I'll go through it. I'll find all the source material. I'll type it out because everything I've said to you today, that was close to word for word of what's actually on the wiki because I'm typing it all out. Royden is another one that I've done, typed out the entire history from Dungeon Saga Origins all the way to so far. I think this is all a little bit I still need to do Pride of the King. Actually, I've done Royden's complete history. Yeah, I've done Royden's complete history from Dungeon Saga Origins all the way to Pride of the King. It's like paragraphs for each bit of it, and it kind of goes through the whole story. So yeah, if you have a character out there you want us to deep dive in, if it's not a character that there's a lot of meat on, we can do several different characters at once, or we could even just do a short episode that week, and we could dive into other things. So yeah, that's my spiel for today. My mouth is very dry right now.
Oh yeah, well, you know what? Talking about short episodes, I don't think this one will qualify, but we try to do it because we're So there was a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm really passionate about, and I'm glad we're able to talk about it. And I hope at least some people listened and enjoyed it. And I think now's a good time to wrap things up. Have you got any final words there, Mark?
No, thank you for joining us. And, if you have any other people or characters you'd like us to talk about, please drop us a note and we'll be happy to take a look at that. You can talk to us on the Facebook page, for MUP. And I encourage everyone to visit the Kings of War Wiki. And if you're interested, to help Dave out with that, you can be part of the team. And I also want to invite everyone to come visit us on the Kings of War Champions Fanatics page over on Facebook. So go ahead. It's a private group, but just, shoot us a, request to join the group and in you come. So we're pretty cool. It's a good place. We talk about champions quite a bit. And we'd love to have you.
Yeah, and we'll plug everything else. So join the MUP Discord as well. Everything I've talked about, I was posting in there to get prep for it and also ask for questions. So you're more welcome to jump in there. We obviously talk about everything that we do on MUP. Every MUP series has its own little thing, even those that don't. Even the MUP Walking Dead, we have a little channel for that as well. Make sure if you want to help us out, you check us back on the Discord. It really does help us enhance a few things behind the scenes, which makes our lives a lot easier. As Mark said, you can join the Facebook page, join our YouTube channel. Mark's actually going to be starting to release some live action content. Funny enough, today is actually the first day we're going to be releasing it. By the time you hear this, we'll have a couple out by this point. But make sure you show some love as well, because we want to play with that format, see what we want to do, and hopefully eventually move to some video podcasting. So this is not just an audio-based one; there's a visual element as well. So just give it all the love, support. Any comments down below, we'll bring them up on the next episode. And yeah, that's about it.
That's it, Dave. You and I got some things planned for YouTube, so stay tuned, folks.
Yes. All right, and until next time, everybody, have a good one. Bye.